Now, former Director General of the National Development Planning Commission is asking government to consider phasing out the boarding school system to concentrate on developing day schools, because the boarding school system, in his opinion, has outlived its usefulness and purpose. Speaking at the maiden roundtable discussion on the 2019 budget statement organized by the Department of Data, Science and Economic Policy at the University of Cape Coast, Dr. Thompson argued it is the only way that government can sustain the free senior high school education policy. Richard Kojonyako has more in this report.
Dr. Thompson's argument hinges on two pillars. The first is his conviction that boarding schools had their place some time ago in the country, but now such schools have outlived their usefulness. And the second, the boarding school system will make the sustenance of the free SHS education, a policy he commends government for, very difficult.
In terms of sustainability, I strongly believe that we need to move towards day schools, community. Why? Because basic education is a community service. The idea of your child having to travel from one end of the country to the other just to get basic education is simply ridiculous, because they've already gotten 9 years from KG1 to JHS 3 of day schooling. So why can't you add the additional 3 years? Why must they go to boarding? Boarding schools had their place and time back in the day. Not any longer. I have a daughter in secondary school. She's SHS 3, so she didn't qualify for free HSS. But when the fees came, half of it, over 50% of it was boarding. Now, this is something every parent can take care of anyway. Whether your child goes to school or not, you feed them, you clothe them, you house them. So why is government taking that responsibility on? There's $1.6 billion voted for in this budget. Let's say $1 billion of that is for boarding. Half of that, 500 million of that, could be used to expand existing facilities in the communities. I heard Professor Dai saying, well, the community secondary schools are too far from the communities. Well, that's the case all over the world. So you think by providing buses, and that was the original idea. Every community-day secondary school will have about 3 or 4 buses, and they will pick up the students from vantage points, just as the private schools do back in Accra and other cities. They don't go to every door, but the kids will congregate in a particular place, and you pick them up and send them.
He wants government to develop day schools and encourage people to school in the communities they reside in order to complete their basic school education that ends at the senior high school level.
We need to destigmatize day schools. It's as if when you go to day school, you are less of a human being. You are from a poor background and other. But there's also a reason for that. I've seen some of the community day schools. They are not the most attractive. They are filthy. The compound there's no landscaping and other. But if we build them and build them well, people themselves on their own will take full advantage of that. But I honestly believe that the secondary school system, the boarding school system, has outlived its usefulness. In my daughter's school, they spend a chunk of their budget just emptying the septic tank.
Richard Kojonyako, JoyNews, Cape Coast.